This week on YouTube, I'm going to show you how to paint this pomegranate with easy to follow steps. I've drawn my outline, as you can see, like this onto my watercolor paper. I've traced it down from this outline, and I'll tell you later on in this video how you can access that for free. I'm using my Etcher sketchbook here, and the paints are from Deep Light. I'll tell you about those in a second. But if you are wondering about this little painting on the side there, this was from a previous tutorial, and I will link it on the top of your screen if you'd like to check it out. These are my paints from Deep Light. I was recently given the privilege of having my own set of paints that I collaborated with Deep Light, and these are the colours swatched out here in their lightest forms. Now these are quite vibrant colours, but I've added a lot of water to these. I've used blueberry, solstice fern, partridge, green woodpecker, forest green, prickly pear and rose hips. Now you don't have to use these colours, you can use whichever colours that you want to, and the brushes are from my own collaboration with Craft Duo, and I'm delighted to announce that we will be doing a second launch. So if you are interested in snagging yourself a pair, if you click through to the link in the description, you'll be notified when we launch them in and around April 2024. So you can see me here, I'm adding a really watery mix of blueberry. Now I've added a lot of water to this because it is a separating colour, it's granulating, and I wanted this to have a really soft bluey grey hue to the outside edge of pomegranate. You can see I've added a little bit of a pencil line just to guide me where I'm going to put this colour, because I don't want it to go everywhere. Now if you don't have blueberry, you could use something like a really light Payne's grey or a really light version of indigo. Just add a lot of water to that mix so that you can see that, that kind of luminosity coming through. Lots and lots of water is what we want here. This colour that I'm using is called Green Woodpecker, again a granulating colour, and I'm adding it straight onto the paper using my number 8 brush from Craft Duo, and just applying it and letting it naturally blur into that initial blue wash. So this time I'm working wet on dry, which means I'm applying the colour straight onto the watercolour paper. Now because this is a granulating colour, you can see me mixing it on my palette there, but just applying it to the areas that you can see. Now if you want the simple outline, the pencil outline that you can see me using here, I will put that right at the end of the video, so all you need to do is pause the video, screenshot it, and you can print it out that way. And the same goes for the photograph that I'm using today. I'll put them right at the end, so be sure to stay right until the end of the video. Again, we're using Green Woodpecker, this time to a slightly thicker consistency, a little bit more pigment, just applying it to these areas that you can see me doing here. Again, just with my number 8 brush, and like I said, we'll be launching a second edition of these in the spring, so just click through and you'll be notified when we launch. Just using that brush just to tidy up the edges there, taking it to the pencil line nice and gently, and now I'm picking up another colour, which is Solstice Fern, with a tiny bit of the darker value forest green. And while that paint is still wet, you can see I'm dropping it to the outside edge and letting it just do its thing by merging into that existing damp wash. You can see this gives a lovely blurred colour, and we're just going to have to be a little bit patient and let this dry before we can apply our next layer of watercolour, because watercolour is all about building up our layers slowly and carefully, making sure that each layer is dry. But for now, we're just going to drop this in, let it do its magic and let it blur into that damp paper so that we can build it up later on. Every week on YouTube we create new content, and if this is something that interests you, you may want to consider subscribing and hitting that little bell notification so that you'll be notified every time we upload new content and you won't miss out. Could I ask you to hit that like button if you are enjoying this video? It really does help to support me because it means that more people can see it. So just by hitting that like button, you're showing your love and support and helping my channel grow, and I'd really appreciate it. You saw me there just adding some of the darker values. We've got forest green and solstice fern, mixing them up. You'll notice that I've added a couple of leaves here and there just for a little bit of balance on the composition, and I'm using Green Woodpecker to add a little bit of drama, a little bit of a first wash there. On this one I'm adding Solstice Fern with a tiny bit of the green woodpecker. If you haven't got forest green, or if you haven't got the colours that I'm using today, you don't have to go out and buy them, by the way. You can see me here, just use my eradicator, using my blender brush. I had a little bit of a moment there, I've gone outside the pencil line. So just by using that brush damp, this is from my set from Craftamo. Like I said, they'll be launching again in the spring of 2024, and that just helps to eradicate any errors, and just using the brush to push that pigment around there. You don't have to use these paints, as I said. If you are struggling with colours, let me know in the comments and I'll help you out based on the colours that you've got yourself. We must let this dry, but in the meantime, let's carry on with the bark. So I'm going to be using Partridge, and that's a really special colour. You saw me pointing out to the swatch that I have there on my swatch card. Partridge is one of those colours that changes. It's almost magical. When I was swatching them out, it turned out to be a green colour to start with and then a brown colour, and you'll see it changing before your eyes. So with these two mixed up, you can see I swatched them out on the card there, and by using some damp paper towel, by blotting that colour, because it's a granulating tone, watch what happens in a moment when it dries down. It really is magic. I'll show you that in a second. This is the outline that I used, and you can have access to that for completely free by joining our free level of Patreon. No strings attached, you can just have that for free. And we also have some paid membership levels, of course, so let's just take a look. When you join Patreon, you will have access to exclusive content that you just won't find here on YouTube. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just dipping your brush into botanical watercolour, you may want to join us here on Patreon, where the magic happens. And with Patreon's new collections tab, it makes accessing the tutorials super easy. When you join us here on Patreon, we dive deep into the art of botanical watercolours, from vibrant blooms to fine detail, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. We have 3 membership levels to suit your skill and budget, and we even have a mentorship and coaching level, so if you're serious about developing your skills, then this could be the level for you. And now you can join Patreon for free, which will give you access to all of our YouTube traceables, which will be delivered weekly to your inbox, so no more scrolling through for the images. So if you are ready to embark on a watercolour adventure, unlock exclusive content, and join a community that celebrates the beauty of botanicals, hit that join button, which I will link in the description. You can join and leave at any time, so do take advantage of that if you're interested in learning more about botanical painting. You won't find any of the videos here on YouTube, they are exclusive for my patrons, but if you did want the free outline, then of course you can join us there for free. I'll link it in the description box. Now just look at these colours. You can see how beautiful they've dried with that pink undertone, and I'm just switching between these 2 colours, which are Prickly Pear and Partridge, and I'm just applying it onto the tree, the sort of barky area that you can see here, just dipping in between the 2 of them, and these little tiny brown areas that you can see on the plant, as well as the underside of the pomegranate. If you don't have these colours, you could use something like a sepia mixed in with a tiny bit of Payne's grey. Something like that would do just as nicely. And I'm just blotting down that colour with a bit of paper towel to take advantage of those granulating tones that we see there with Prickly Pear and Partridge. We're back to Solstice Fern and Green Woodpecker, just in variation here on these little leaves that we see on the branch, and again on the others that you can see me doing here. This time I'm using my number 2 brush from my set, and applying the Solstice Fern and Green Woodpecker mixed together over this little leaf here and around the outside here. All the materials that I'm using today I will link in the description box underneath. If you did want to treat yourself to the Raise Blooms palette that you see me using from Deep Deep Light, there is a discount code which will give you 10% off these paints, and indeed any of Deep Deep Light's paints, by quoting Deep Deep Ray, and you'll get your 10% discount on these beautiful, beautiful handmade paints from Latvia. Like I said, I will link it in the description box, and by quoting that code, you'll get 10% off. But you don't have to use them. You can use whatever colours you want. I'm a great advocate of people using what's in their kit. Okay, everything's dry, so I've cleaned out my palette, and I'm adding a really watery mix here of rosehip, and again we're back to the greens that we had earlier on. These colours are very, very strong, by the way, but because I'm adding lots of water, I want them to have a really watery feel today, so we're building them up slowly. Because this is dry, we can add another layer of water here, and I'm dropping in these paints wet on dry, just charging up that colour and giving a little bit of variation by adding that lovely rosehip colour there. And we're back to green woodpecker and solstice fern, dropping it into that wet paper as we did the first time around, but this time of course adding more colour to build up those layers. If you do have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer you. I am always in the comments answering questions. If you do get stuck, let me know and I will help you out. Particularly with colours, I think if sometimes you haven't got the same colours that I'm using, and you're a little bit worried about joining in, let me know in the comments. I will always be able to tell you what to use based on what you have within your own set. You can see I'm just dropping in a tiny bit of green woodpecker there, along with a little bit of rosehip, and just dropping it in for a bit of variation. Cleaning my brush, patting it dry, and just using that damp brush to blend those colours into the areas that I want it to go. This is forest green, dropping it in on the underside there of the pomegranate for a little bit of shadow, a little bit of shading, and again just dropping in that paint here and there for a little bit of a textured look. By just patting that brush onto the paper, you can see how it releases the paint. And again, back to my blender brush, just to do a little bit of lifting out where we've got these little shapes at the base there. Just by lightly pressing, we can see how that lifts out that shape, ready to add some colour. And I've just lifted out a little vein in the middle of that leaf there, as you can see, and again at the top. Adding a tiny bit of the forest green there at the base. Everything's dry, so we're back to building up our colours. This time I'm using blueberry again, watered down version of blueberry and partridge. Look how that colour's changed from that greeny tone to that brown tone. It's quite a magical colour. So I'm just using partridge here, going over that first wash, using my number 2 brush, leaving a little bit of gap here and there, just dropping in a bit more colour. Just to give it a more textured look. You can see that I'm just randomly putting this colour on using the tip of my brush to release that pigment, and again using a damp brush to blend it in a little bit, just to take away some of the hard edges, as you can see me doing here. Dropping in a bit more of the prickly pear here and there, again to add a bit of pigment and a bit of variation to make it look as if it's not a flat colour. I'm using blueberry for the upper side of this because I felt that it has a kind of a bit of light hitting that section, and by adding a bit of that blue tone it makes it look less flat. So we're just dropping in the blueberry, and then while it's still wet, adding a bit more prickly pear and a little bit of partridge here and there. No rhyme or reason. Like I said, if you haven't got these colours, you could use something like an indigo watered down, or a sepia. Something like that would work just as well. using my number 4 brush. This brush has a really fine tip and it's great for finer detail. So if you are really interested in botanical painting or anything that requires full control of your brush, then this is a fantastic brush to use from my set. So I'm just adding a bit of water to these elements, and then I'm mixing a tiny bit of rosehip with partridge, and just to create this kind of darker rusty coloured tone. If you've got something like a burnt umber, that would work just as well here. And I'm just dropping it in to these areas, as you can see me doing here. Just using the tip of the brush to add these details. Because of the fine tip, it means that I can get into all the nooks and crannies and create the shapes that I want to. I'm just using it to do a bit of blending there and adding a tiny bit of this rosehip colour to that branch just to give it a bit of variation, and using that damp brush to merge the colours together. We're back to green woodpecker and solstice fern. Adding a bit more detail to the leaves, as you can see me doing here, just randomly applying that colour to have the variation because these paints are now dry, and adding a tiny bit of blueberry jam just to tone it down a little bit and give that green a bit of variation. Remember to stay until the end of this video where I'll show you the finished painting. You can pause that screen and have the outline, the simple outline of the pencil drawing, and the reference photograph that you can see on your screen. So just by pausing that video, you can screenshot it and print it out that way. But as I said, if you want the digital version that I showed you earlier on, you can have that for free by joining Patreon. It's a free membership level for that. You don't have to pay anything, there's no catch. And it's just a way of having access to these paintings, these outlines. We've been doing that for about a year or so, something like that. We've been doing that since about September last year. So you can see I've just added a little bit of those varying colours there, the variations, as you can see, picking up that's green woodpecker, and just adding some detail to these little areas like this, working around some negative spaces there. If you want to join in, just follow what I'm doing. We're back to the green colours here. I want to mention, actually, a little while ago somebody mentioned on one of my videos that they didn't like me playing music in between some of the takes, and the reason why I have music playing when I'm not talking is it just fills up the airtime, otherwise it just looks like dead air, and I actually quite like it. So if it bothers you, then you can turn the volume down, of course, while I'm not talking, but it's something that I quite like. It stops it from being dead air, and I think it just adds a little bit of something to the videos. And I always play music at the end of them as well. I like it, and I'm going to continue to do that. So if you don't like it, then turn down the volume. Just thought I ought to mention that. So going around here, just going around the outside, creating some negative space between that little vein there, just for a bit of interest, using the colours that you can see me mixed up on my palette. And speaking of music, I'm going to stop talking now and let you watch the rest of this video in peace. It's a case of repeating the process on each element of the plant, and you can see the colours that I've mixed because I'll show you as I work through. And I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you listen to some music, And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. Remember to like this video if you've enjoyed it. We've still got a little way to go, so I'm going to stop talking, play you some relaxing music, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching. Remember to hit that like button if you've enjoyed it, and to subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.